Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here with my friend and colleague Jim Gourlay. And today should be a pretty interesting show. I had a personal experience yesterday that I shared with Jim before we started recording, and we both agreed that we could walk around our flywheel in all five categories just based on this one event. And it's personal, so yeah, I'm not apologizing for it. I'm not making excuses for it. It's just personal, and we've decided to present it. Jim's also having some internet challenges on his end, so we might lose him. He might be with us, and his sound is a little bit less quality than mine, but we felt it was good enough because the content was so good. So I got divorced years ago, 10, 15 years ago. It was a long process. That's why I say 10 to 15, maybe 20. I was in and out of court for 9 years before I got a final resolution. So it was pretty nutty. And yesterday, years later, I had an outstanding debt owed to me for child support. And I got child support as a man, so you can, connect the dots on that one too. And I decided to go and pursue the outstanding amount of money because it was substantial. It was significant enough and there was a part of me that was like, there's a principle to this too. This is mine, and she's violating a court order. So anyway, I've been away from it for so long that I don't get emotionally attached to her and haven't for a long time, unless she pokes at my kids, which she does periodically. And then I get a little bit angry. Um, so in going to the court, I wasn't really, like I told you, Jim, I wasn't really attached to any specific emotion the night before or the morning of.
Mhm.
But when I pulled into the parking lot, my entire emotional state and physical state started to like dissolve. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. But in life, as you well know, as we all know, this hardship comes, and you got to face it sometimes. You can't just walk away from it, and but I just started to get this, I told you, a cocktail of negative emotions: anger, frustration, anxiety, sadness, pity. Yeah, it was really, really wild. And then, I'm in the waiting room and she's sitting over there and we're not looking at one another. And then we get called in, and then the judge asked me, among other things, what are we trying to accomplish here? And I said, she's in contempt. If you want more information than that, I'm happy to share whatever details you'd like. I'm here to get my money. That's the court ordered was mine. And then I'd like to get out of here as soon as possible and put this behind me forever. And, and then I got some of what I wanted. I got a chunk, and we got up to go to leave, and I was first walking out, and the whole time back to the car until we got to the parking lot, she was right behind me talking on the phone, so hoping that I could hear what she was saying, and I didn't. She was trying to intimidate me or make me more anxious or whatever, and that's just basically her narcissistic nature. And then we got to the parking lot, and I took the stairs up to the sixth floor because I wasn't getting in the elevator with her. But when you and I started talking about it, Jim, and I'm going to throw it over to you, and you can walk me around the wheel as it pertains to money, women, communication, relationships, all of the above. You can start wherever you want, but that's kind of the groundwork for what we're going to talk about today. So if that's interesting, stick around.
Well, Mark, first of all, thanks for sharing this with us today because the reality is over 50% of the population is going to go through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I appreciate your vulnerability to share this with us because I think for those that are uh, going through it now or have gone through it or will be going through it, whether they're aware of it or not, uh, it, it it speaks to them. It also speaks to the triggers that go off. And then, again, before we started recording, uh, how does this fit in our framework of these five areas of our life? And I think it's very relevant to the five areas. So that's what I'd like to do is, again, kind of take a lap with you about these five areas. And just to remind those who are familiar with our framework that we use every week for every episode, it's no particular order, right? But
Yep.
one of the areas is money and our relationship with money, the triggers of money based on your abundance uh, outlook in life, or based on uh, scarcity. And again, that's very related to also to your worldview and how you think. It's also related to others. In this case, how it affects your relationship with her, but also how it affects your children.
Yeah.
And then the other one is our health, and our physical health, and our mental health. And again, just the triggers. This affected you physically, of course, emotionally, and it is a mental health kind of crisis at that very moment, right? Because all
Hmm.
these triggers are going off, and
Yep.
I think you shared with me, and I don't want to speak out of context, but I think you've even shared it did affect your career. Going through that with her,
Hmm.
right? The divorce and the emotional. This is over what, a 10-year, 15-year time period.
Yeah,
Just give us a
I filed my initial filing in 2002. I remember that, and I remember signing the final dissolution of marriage in 2011. So I was in the court system for 9 years. And so it's also
yeah,
been, since then, it's been 13 years to 2024. The thing
13
about it
years.
is,
Wow.
Jim, and to give it a little more context, the thing about it
Mm-hmm.
is she was so emotionally abusive to my children. I ended up
Mm-hmm.
getting sole custody of my children as my own attorney, and I'm not an attorney. That's how fucking crazy
Wow.
it was. And so
Yeah.
she,
How
you don't.
old? Just to get Mark, I have a question again, just to appreciate the, the background, the story. How old were the kids at that time?
So in 2002, I guess somewhere in the area, I can't do the math right now, but somewhere in the area of 8, 13, and 15, something like that, 8, 12, and 16, something like that. So they were,
Wow.
my son was single digits and my daughters were young teenagers. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah. So it's
it
very,
was,
very relevant to this, the rest of the story, right? Because
yeah,
that's at a very impressionable moment in their lives and time. It
yeah,
always is as a childhood, but
yeah.
you bet.
There's
Yeah.
so much to this story that you couldn't possibly put it in one episode. So what I want, what I want, I'm happy to share it because,
but
hindsight makes these things funny, right? And
yeah, I love the humor aspect, but I do, but we could, like you said, of course, we're not going to be able to go in depth, but I do think we can capture a lot of this in these 5 areas, right?
we
And
can.
break this down, and again, I know that could be very valuable for somebody uh, going forward, which is our mission, right? That's
Yep.
we call it a men's club, but this perspective obviously is a man's perspective, your
Hmm.
perspective versus her. So let's start off with the one big elephant in a lot of these rooms, and that's narcissistic women, particularly. And I'm sure there's plenty of men, if not more. I don't know the numbers on that, but I think my experience with narcissists is, first of all, they don't know they're narcissists because they don't care. All
Yeah.
they care about themselves.
Yeah.
I've never met this uh, woman. I'll refer to her as that. But she definitely, based on what you're saying, displays all those characteristics.
Yeah.
And my experience is when you find out they are, it's too late. Then it's just a matter of managing access to you in any way,
Yeah.
right? Physically, financially, emotionally, and then creating barriers the best you can
You know,
to
the,
avoid them
the thing,
because
couple of things that kind of, I think are germane and maybe we can drill into them a little bit. One is that you can't change people. You just can't change people. People have to change themselves. And if you're
yeah,
unwilling to change yourself, you're not going to change, and it's probably the same thing with addiction of any kind. It's people have to be ready to change themselves. And one of the things she could never do is go inside and say, what's wrong with me? What do I need
yeah,
to
yeah,
fix? What can I get better at? There was never any personal accountability. There was never any self-awareness or
yeah,
self-reflection ever. And
yeah.
that would be one thing. And the other point, and you can pick whatever these topics you want, is you got to get people that suck energy out of you, out of your life as soon as possible. And I
Mm-hmm,
think we
mm-hmm.
all, I know I do, I did here. Um, if especially if you're a decent human being, you make the mistake of saying, I think I can help, I think I can change, and I'll be patient. And
Yeah.
you can't. And there's
Yeah.
probably examples of that being not the case, but I don't know of any, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, again, just about change. I don't think we can change as much as we think we can. All we can do is change the way we view it. So that there's so much going on in the world that we don't have control of. And the people like her that think they actually can change everything to their liking, that
Hmm.
those are the most narcissistic and dangerous people there is.
Yep.
Yeah, nothing changed. All you can do is the way you view how you, and then it will change.
Yep.
That's kind of the interesting thing about it,
Well,
right?
again, I think that one of the reasons this is germane is because there's a lot of this shit going on in the world right now. There's a lot of people in
Oh, it's
denial
very
about the
relevant.
truth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was,
We were kidding around about when you were describing, you know, her characteristics. I said it sounds like a Biden Democrat right now, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Completely in denial, and himself right now, and his sidekick, Dr. Jill. It's
I
embarrassing.
think,
I'm not even trying. We have to laugh about it, but it's almost not even funny anymore. It's
no, it's
clear
not.
their own party saying this guy is not right, and either he's a narcissist or the people around him are narcissists. And you think about who his top advisors are right now, and that's his son.
Hmm.
They got yeah.
That's
So
crazy. That's
isn't it?
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah. So that you gotta be careful. Who you surround yourself with. But getting back to what you're going through, these triggers. Let's use the framework of these triggers because I know you've done a lot of personal work on this too, right? I know
Hmm.
you do your breathing, you do a lot of things. Did that help this time? Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
a
Yeah.
general question between how she was able to the triggers that were going off maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's been going on for about 15 years. This one, it sounded to me like you were prepared, but it still was able to break through some of those um,
Yeah. I wish,
protective mechanisms that you put in place.
yeah, it's really crazy how people can bring energy into a room. I've been
Or
told
suck it
many
out.
Yeah, I've been told many times that I bring energy into the room when I walk in a positive sense. And she both sucked it out of the room, but also brought in a lot of shitty energy.
Mhm.
It's like palatable. The
Mhm.
physical and mental components of this were, I mean, I got a little couple skin things going on my body that I guarantee you
Wow.
are
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of this physical
Your body's
manifestation.
reacting. No
Body's
question.
reacting, and my
Yeah.
body, I've been in this body for a long time. I know it well, and I'm
Yeah.
one of those people that has a good sense of what's wrong and what's right with my
Yeah.
body. But the thing about it is, I've done, to your point, I've done a lot of inner work, particularly recently, and
Hmm.
absolutely it helped me. The most it did for me, Jim, because I can't really put my finger on the unconscious stuff, but after the fact, when it was over and I was in my car and I got home and I immediately sat down and took a bunch of deep breaths, closed my eyes and connected with God and just thanked him for getting me through. And then within an hour, I was back. It was as if it hadn't gone on, but it was way more impactful to my physical and mental wellness a few days before than I was consciously aware, which I think is interesting. Mm.
Yeah. So again, let's just take a lap around the the wheel of life. Um, and I guess sometimes the best answers are 30 seconds or less, or we'll go this one, 10 seconds or less. Money. What triggers does she set off when the money area?
Well, she uses money to manipulate people. She's incapable of love and real affection and compassion, so she buys people things, and
Mhm.
that's what narcissistic people do.
Mhm.
you know.
It's also a device, right? It's a device to hurt you with, and
Hmm.
and she knows that that's a one effective way of moving her pain from her onto you. So,
It's a weapon.
and
Yeah,
that
it's a weapon.
it's a weapon, it's a device,
Yep.
and that's I think we all do it, but particularly scorn women, uh,
Yeah.
and I'll even go as far as saying, let's say, mid age scorn woman,
Yep. Yep.
and again, it's something that's taboo to talk about, but I think we can talk about it, right? They get to a stage in life, that's a general statement, and she's probably not feeling good about herself because she doesn't have a relationship with her children. That's kind of a big deal, right?
Yep.
She's been I don't want to use the word successful, but she's been successful in uh, transferring what you had built together, or what you had built, your company, your home. She's extracted that, or she's been able to move that from you to her. So I know she probably, that's a money component. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I mean,
think
there's a lot.
yeah, well, and to move the around the wheel, you mentioned it earlier, my career,
Mm-hmm.
she spent years showing up at work, accosting me, my employees. She even sent communication, like letters and emails, to clients of mine. And
Wow.
and a lot of this stuff is, you'd think it should be illegal. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she signed a IRS refund check for $45,000. It came to me. She signed my name to it and cashed it, you know? So,
That's a criminal act. She
no,
could
it's
go to
not.
jail for
Not
that.
if you're married, not in Florida. How crazy is
Wow.
that? How crazy is that?
Wow.
So it
Yeah.
might be today with DeSantis in office, but it wasn't when I was going through my shit.
Interesting. Wow.
And then,
Yeah.
and there's all kinds of other money things, but the physical and mental health stuff is, I mean, my children all struggle with anxiety as a result of this experience. We
Mm-hmm.
all collectively have worked together on
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And, you and I
Mm-hmm.
talk about self-awareness and self-reflection all the time, because our wheel at the center is the self. This is a this is a psychology 101 in
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness and self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Without that, I would be fucked, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that
And one of the things that, yeah, that she doesn't have, and that's self-awareness, right? Um, self-aware
she's
enough
got to
to
be,
how what she's doing is destructive
yeah,
to her
there's no
own children. And
self-awareness. Yeah.
yeah,
Everything
yeah,
is external for her. There's nothing internal going on there. And she's smart,
yeah,
and
yeah.
she works hard, she has a couple of good qualities, but the whole thing, the whole thing explodes with the lack of self-awareness and narcissism,
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
and
let's move on to the worldview then.
yeah,
How does this change your worldview? I think how could it not, to some degree? Because sure, maybe there's some politics in it, but there's these other parts of your life that we talk about in the worldview, and that is your childhood. That is, you mentioned spirituality, how that's helping you through this. But yeah, talk to me about that area, about worldview. And then
well,
again, 10
certainly,
seconds or less. It's just a perspective based on
yeah,
this
I think.
experience in the last 24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how people get through hardship in life without some connection with God. I just don't know how people do it. And I have, my ability to lean on him and say, thank you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I need you, be with me today, help me get through this. That's a constant conversation for me, constant. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't always my whole life, but I was Catholic and went to church every Sunday and every holy day until I was 17, and then I didn't go to church again for another 35 years. And I went off to school
Wow.
at a Catholic university, Notre Dame. So, um, I wasn't being defiant or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad saying one day to me, you don't have to buy into this quite yet. I just want you to have something to come back to when you find yourself lost sometime in your adult life. And I'm like, what
Mm-hmm.
a prescient thing to say,
Mm-hmm.
because
So
there it was.
that covers spirituality, but I want to just
Yep.
keep it moving, right? Because
Yep.
that's the exercise. But now let's talk about your childhood, because you've shared with me the relationship with your mother. Maybe this belongs in the in the others, right? People category of your relationship with women. But I think there is a connection between the relationship
Yeah.
with our mothers
Yeah.
and the relationship with our spouses or our girlfriends or whoever it is.
Yep.
This is probably more in the area of others, people,
Yeah.
and
Relationships. I
and
think that I've
relationship.
heard many psychologists say that women seek out men like their fathers, and men seek out women like their mothers. And I don't know. I don't have any data to
Mark,
back that.
if I could just not to start to interrupt, I want to. It's not a correction. It's we are conditioned as children to tolerate things.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I can do kind of a deep dive in this alone. It's conditioning. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing that, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with this. It's part of being a human. But
Hmm.
when you're young, you are conditioned to accept things or not to accept things based on your experiences. So there is a connection between your mother and the relationship you have with her. You know how relevant it is. I'm not here to judge or make that. That was just a question. Have you been able to connect the relationship with your mother to the relationship with your ex-wife?
Yeah, I think my ex-wife and my mother have had a lot in common. I think my mother
Interesting.
was very, very insecure. She was very intelligent. She was very athletic. My ex wasn't very athletic, but she was very intelligent. Um, and she was at some point. My mother was gorgeous her whole life. My ex, as soon as the anger volume went up, she started crumbling looks wise. And did all kind of but they were, I mean, anger makes you physically fall apart. It just does over time.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and 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 the
it
but
does. It
I
does.
will say, the biggest difference between the two of them, and it's a big difference, is my mother was not dishonest. My mother was not malicious. her
Mm-hmm,
her shit
mm-hmm,
was all her shit. But there, I see a lot of similarities, from looks to brains to senses of humor to artistic capabilities to, yeah,
mm-hmm.
there's something there.
There was something there for you to tolerate some of that behavior, right? You were somewhat conditioned to it, whatever that is. I also think just by observation of seeing these dynamics develop, there could also been a, a high level of resentment that she was able to hide. Resentment to you, maybe even your mother, resentment to your father about their role in life, or maybe even their own accolades. Again, I'm not here. I'm not passing judgment right now. I'm just looking for your perspective. Do you
Yeah.
think she grew to resent you because either you were the focus of attention that diverted the attention from her? Because that's the other
Yeah.
thing.
No,
We
that's a
yeah.
valid observation. It makes me think of one particular moment in time when I was still living in the home and we were still married. One of her girlfriends and I were in the back, and we were talking, and I think that maybe we were having a party or something, but I remember us turning around and looking at the house from across the other side of the pool. Beautiful home, big pool. And I remember, no, she was talking to my ex, and I was sitting on a chair on the porch so I could hear her. And she said something like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Look at him. Look at those kids. Look at this house. What are you doing? You're going to throw all this away? What the fuck is wrong with you? And instead of listening to that, she went nuts. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that there was a lot of jealousy there. There was a lot of resentment there. And to your point, she had a great relationship with my mother and father until she didn't. And as
Yeah.
soon as she didn't, they were enemies. They were
Yeah.
enemies. Anybody that agreed with me about anything was immediately an enemy. So,
Mm-hmm.
she even did that with the kids, you know? So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's her MO. Yeah, and that's what she was seeking out every day, is somebody to validate her, or validate and justify her sick thoughts.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah. This
yeah,
is also yeah. And it can not to hold a conversation, but the currency could have been attention. She wasn't able to give uh, herself the attention, or the credit maybe, and then she started to resent you for drawing the attention maybe away
yeah,
from her. Yeah.
yeah. Jim, I think in life, and we're both old enough now. You're in your late 50s, me in my early 60s, and I think that we're both have enough life experience and have made choices that would be representative of guys that were interested in healing themselves, helping themselves, taking personal responsibility for themselves. I think the biggest challenge in that made that relationship fall apart was her unwillingness to do any of that work. Everything was 100% my fault. And it
Mhm.
was no, let's talk about it. There was no, you mentioned communication. There was no communication. Communication was one way. And the Biden-esque comment is like, this is what people like this do when they're in an argument and disagreement with someone. They either raise their voice, they change the subject, or they walk away. And we see that all the time with our politicians.
Mhm.
So communication was a completely lacking. But I also would connect that to the other kind of piece of this. I would say to any guy who's contemplating, connecting with a woman for the rest of your life. Um, you have to talk about stuff. You have to talk about
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And again, I'll repeat it. You can't change people. And, when you look under the covers of this, if you were proverbially able to, you'd see a really difficult childhood. You'd see a bad dad. You'd see a bad mom. You'd see really aberrant behavior inside the family, yelling and screaming and probably physical abuse, emotional abuse for sure, and maybe sexual
Yeah.
abuse. So there's a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
going on there. And if
Yeah, there
that
is. But
person,
yeah, but
if
let's
that,
talk about, because I think you do. I think you touched on something that's worthy of expanding on. That is, you can size somebody. I'm talking about a wife or girlfriend or whatever. But the relationship with her father will affect the relationship with you over time, because
Mhm.
she's either going to seek out the same validation, or even worse, seek out the same criticism that her father gave her.
Yeah,
So yeah, and then you get into the other conversation. How was that relationship with the mother? But I do think the father daughter relationship, or father for anybody, quite
yeah,
honestly, frankly, will play itself out over time. So
yeah. No, that
uh,
was definitely there. That was definitely there. I think
why?
I
Because
think,
she had you mentioned her family. They were from Ireland, right?
yeah,
Wasn't she?
yeah,
So
yeah.
they were immigrants, first generation. And she's first
Well,
generation.
well, no, she was born in the United States in Los Angeles, and then they moved back to Dublin when she was like 2 or 3 years old. So dual
I see.
citizenship. Her father never came over for good. He stayed and passed away over there years ago. And her mother
Uh-huh.
came, and she lives in Florida, and they haven't talked in 15 years, as far as I know.
Huh.
But
Wow.
on the flip side of that, Jim, my current my current girlfriend, and I think I've told you this before, when the first time I kind of thought to myself, "Oh, this is going to work." I mean, I was enamored pretty quickly, for a lot of reasons. She's outwardly just so loving and kind, but she the phone rang once when we were over at her house, and she picked it up and she went, "Daddy," and I thought to myself, "Okay, this one's going to work."
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it helps, like you said, because they look at you for security. They look at you for consistency. They don't look at you to be criticized um, or hurt again. And it's
He's
again, this stuff
he
is this is all playing on in their subconscious mind. So if they haven't taken the time to uh, to self reflect and become self aware, it's going to play itself out again in
I
other parts
think
of their
that
life. Yeah.
I think everything we stand for comes from that ability to self-assess, and that willingness to look in the mirror and say, I'm responsible for the rest of my life, and I've been responsible for the past of my life. My willingness to accept that and to be able to identify what I can control and what I can't, not worry about what I can't too much, not worry about what might happen in the future too much, and just drill down into the present. All this work, if you're not willing to do that at some point in your life, the rest of your life will be miserable, relatively
Mm-hmm.
speaking. I'm 100% convinced of this. It's all
Yeah.
choices, all of it.
No question. No question. You also said something before we started recording about how this is almost a reflection of our time. That this behavior, this personality. Yeah, tell me more about that. Maybe this fits in the worldview, right? The worldview part of our framework. But what do you see in her that you see going on every day in our media, in our politics, and every
Well,
day?
the way that she treats people, is not from a position of kindness or compassion. It's manipulative, and I think there's a ton
Mhm.
of that going on right now. I think that
Give
we're
me an
being
example, Mark. Give me an example that comes first thing that comes to mind.
which an
That
example for her or our society.
either one, just society. But you said you see that going on a lot right now. Give me an example
Well,
of
manipulating words, using words
mhm,
with and changing the meaning of words,
mhm,
putting people into groups, being prejudiced towards groups of
mhm,
people.
Mhm.
I mean, the list is so long, so
Yeah,
those
yeah.
are
The,
two.
the one the one say the same thing over and over again, even though it's a complete lie, so
Hmm.
eventually becomes a truth. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's the one that bothers me the most, particularly about
Well,
the Biden administration. I know Trump does the same thing. I don't want to make this a Biden Trump thing, but that he is saying things that absolutely aren't true. But he doesn't know the difference or doesn't care. But he believes if he says them enough times, and then he gets the people around him to say them, that they'll become truth.
well,
And that's
it's interesting in that, I don't know whether he doesn't know what he's doing or he's just going along, because he's definitely not in charge. You know, other people are running the country right now. But yeah, manipulation is, and it's like, I've told you this a million times. I can't believe how stupid they think we are, And she did
yeah,
the same thing, she knew that
yeah,
I was an
yeah,
intelligent man, but she quite often treated me with disrespect and as if I was stupid, like a child,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And again, this,
Audacity. Mark? What does audacity mean? Is that the right word? Is the audacity? What's the
you
definition of
know,
audacity?
well, you do something maybe, and it's like, who the hell do you think you are? Audacious
Yeah,
is like, it's bold, but in a negative way.
yeah,
It's arrogant. It's
yeah,
irresponsible. All of those things. I mean, I don't have to
yeah.
look it up, but that's what I believe it to be. You know?
I, I agree, and it sounds like that. Those were some of her characteristics, which
Yeah,
to your earlier point, is playing out every day in media channels on both
yeah,
sides.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
The other thing is, my benchmark for how couples get through hard times, because I don't know any couples that are in it for 15 or 20 years and haven't experienced some hard times. There's events in life that bring those things along. Some people probably get lucky and skate through a lot of that stuff, but most people don't. And I think what I've watched, and the friends that I have that are still married, even though they went through some rocky times and are having a good time now and enjoying a wonderful rest of their lives, they put in the work, man. They communicated, they got a third party to help. They did it consistently over a period of time. They both took responsibility for things. They looked for
yeah,
compromises. They treated each
yeah,
other with respect. That you can't do it any other way.
yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things you said that's so important is they worked on themselves.
Yep.
They didn't try to work on the other person before they went to work on. They worked on themselves first. I
Hmm.
think it's common that, well, if I fix this person or change that person, then my life gets better. When
Hmm.
they're the problem, and
Yep.
so I see that all the time, and I would I see that in myself when I started working more on what was wrong with me and
Hmm.
um, getting clear on what that was, whether that goes back to my childhood or goes back to whatever um, insecurities is what they are,
Hmm.
and then put them out there and dealing with them. If you don't do that, then they will come back to haunt you
Yeah.
in ways you don't even know about. So it just always comes back to self awareness, right in the center. I
Well,
love. In fact, I was talking. I use the framework a lot in my just daily conversations, but you often you hold up, you used to hold up your hand and you go
hmm
like this
hmm
because it's true. If you get confused about the 5 areas of your life, just hold your hand up or not
Yep.
hold it up. Look at it, turn it over, point to the middle. There's you, and then these other
Self.
5 areas. Yeah, there, and it radiates out. That's why it's a
Yep.
circle.
Yeah.
It radiates out,
Yeah.
whether
No.
you're aware of it or not. It's happening, and then
No.
it's
The
working
whole
on
thing.
those areas.
The whole thing to me, and I'm not patting myself on the back by any means, because I fucked a lot of stuff up and I could have done a lot of things different. But
Back to
you
self
know,
awareness, right? Yeah.
I didn't give up. I never once said to myself, this is too hard. I can't do this. I'm just gonna quit. And I don't know how much of that was my own self-worth or how much of that was, I cannot let my children down. You know,
I think it's the children. Yeah, and you also understand why some guys just lose it,
yeah.
and drop out either. Some guys end up killing their wives with it. That's it's probably less common, fortunately.
Well,
But
you know
some
what?
guys do drop out.
Oh yeah.
There's
Oh yeah. No,
there's
you've seen it.
they
My
yeah.
dad left. They got divorced. And my dad left, and I haven't seen him in 20 years. Yeah, it happens.
Mhm.
Makes me think of the
Yeah,
comedian Bill Burr. He talks about hitting women, and he is able to talk about stuff
yeah,
that you can't talk about, and people
yeah,
laugh. He's like, now listen. I'm not saying you should, but there's no reason. You can't think of any reason to hit a woman. I can think of like 17 of them right now.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
saying you should,
Yeah.
but,
The first
and then
one is hit them back, because a lot of times their emotion, they hit you, and then
yeah.
again, I don't.
Oh, dude,
I can.
I'm not a violent person at all, and I would certainly never hit a woman,
Well,
but
I am
I,
the violent person. I've never hit a woman, and I
yeah,
take great pride in that. It takes
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
restraint not to. Doesn't mean there wasn't a few in my life that deserved it, but I can
Yeah,
say
no,
without.
I had opportunities. I had plenty of opportunities and plenty of motivation. And
Yeah.
so, I appreciate you wanting to hear my story. It was a very interesting day yesterday. It was
Mhm.
I think the takeaways are a few, really, really good nuggets. And all of this stuff, I
Yeah.
guess, is obvious in hindsight, but and I'll throw it over to you when I'm done. But I think that a couple things that I took away were, the internal work I'm doing, I recommend it to everybody. I don't know what I
Mhm.
do, and it used to be exercise for me in the form of full court basketball and weightlifting and stuff. But as I've aged and I've been unable to continue
Mhm.
those things, I picked up things like yoga and walking and breath work
Yeah.
and meditation. I just think there's so many tools out there that can help you get through life happy and fulfilled, as you like to say. That's a better word. You got to get negative people out of your life.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
anybody out there is contemplating, they're on the fence, jump over the fucking fence. Get out of
Yeah.
there. It's
Yeah.
just everything gets better. Everything gets better. And then
Yeah.
I think one of the keys to my relative success, I'm relatively healthy. I'm not in any significant debt. I've got interesting things I'm working on. I've got a great relationship with my kids. I love my girlfriend. Life is good,
Mhm.
life is
Mhm.
good. And
Yeah.
I think those are all choices, man. You make all those
Yeah.
choices. I could have gone dark. I could have gone angry. I could have gone mad. And I was emotionally in those states of mind off and on, but I was never content in them. I wanted out of them. I wanted to move back. And you can't change people. Those are, those
Yeah.
are my, those are
Yeah.
my things. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of us, myself included, kid themselves into thinking that they can.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, to wrap this one up, I two things that you said I were worthy of mentioning and expanding on. That was one, gratitude. That
Mhm,
takes work to live
mhm,
with gratitude every day. It's so easy uh, to wake up every day and just be mad at the world, but
mhm.
to find gratitude takes some work, and it makes everything better. The people around you and everything. Um, and what was the other one?
Let me jump in while you think
Yeah,
to remember
good.
the other
Yeah,
one. I think that an exercise that I have people do, not just clients, but friends that ask for my advice or clients or whatever, is to your point. I think gratitude is the most powerful emotion that you can have in
yeah,
the entire world, and
mhm,
it's difficult, you say, but the easiest way to get at it, in my experience, is get out a pad of paper and a pencil and start writing the stuff down that you're
mhm,
grateful for. That
yeah,
list gets fucking long quick.
yeah. That's a great exercise. Yeah, and then the other one that was pulling up was we grow bitter or we grow better. It's a
Mhm,
choice. The default is we grow bitter,
mhm.
and nobody likes an old, bitter, grumpy person. Nobody likes to be around them.
Nope.
I think that
Nope.
that would be your ex-wife. Everybody just tolerates them.
Yeah,
Nobody.
that's a
Yeah,
lonely life. That's a lonely
it's a
life.
lonely life.
Hey,
Yeah,
hey,
and
ending on a humorous note, the period at the end of the sentence, if you will. A couple hours after I got home yesterday, I get an anonymous message from a LinkedIn member in all capitals with some of the words. I didn't save it because that's not my bag. People are like, let me see it. Let me see it. I'm like, nah, it's not worth saving. Imposter, loser, asshole,
yeah,
liar.
yeah. All the things that she is.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Sometimes when we're criticizing somebody, we're actually talking about ourselves. And
Oh,
I,
she is a walking projection model.
yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, dude, that
but
was
that,
fun. I hope it was
yeah,
entertaining and somebody there
yeah, well, it was
who's
too.
in the middle of this shit got something out of it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That
Thanks,
was
Jim.
good stuff, Mark. All right, until next week.
Yeah.